Some secrets are buried so deep that even shadows are afraid to touch them. But when deception becomes the air you breathe, there's only one way out: burn it all to the ground. Miss the ending, and betrayal will become your shadow too. The collapse of my marriage began not with a bang, but with the quiet erosion of 1,000 unspoken moments. Evelyn had always been a creature of precision. Her morning rituals timed to the minute, her skincare products arranged in clinical rows, her planner color-coded with obligations I'd long stopped asking about. For 14 years, I mistook this order for devotion. But order, I'd come to learn, is just chaos wearing a mask. It was the silence that first unnerved me, not the absence of sound, but the kind that sits between two people like a third passenger in a car. We'd stopped debating books over dinner. She no longer left post-it notes on the fridge reminding me to hydrate. Even our arguments had dissolved into polite concessions, as if we'd both silently agreed that friction was too intimate a thing to share. I told myself this was the natural progression of a mature marriage, companionship refined to its essence. But when she began taking her phone to the shower, I stopped lying to myself. My work as a cybersecurity architect had trained me to see patterns in noise. Firewalls breached, data packets rerouted, anomalies in the static. Yet I'd missed the signals in my own home. The new brand of tea in the pantry, Earl Grey, though she'd always hated bergamot. The unexplained mileage on her Lexus, 317 extra miles in March, logged during yoga classes. The way she'd started dressing for grocery runs, linen blouses ironed to knife edges, as if hoping to be photographed. The first crack split open on a humid Tuesday in July. I'd been stress testing a hospital's network in preparation for their AI integration when my phone buzzed, a notification from our smart thermostat. Temperature adjusted to 68 degrees Fahrenheit at 1:23 p.m. Odd. Evelyn despised the cold. She'd once thrown a vase at the wall during a fight over AC settings. I pulled up the security feed, my fingers pausing midair. There she was, draped in a silk robe I didn't recognize, laughing as a man's hand reached into the frame to tweak the dial. The camera angle spared me his face, but not the Rolex on his wrist, a Cosmograph Daytona, platinum bezel glinting like a smirk. I dissected the footage with forensic detachment, rewinding to track his arrival. A black Escalade with dealer plates had pulled into our driveway at 12:47 p.m. Evelyn greeted him barefoot, a detail that cut deeper than it should have. She'd always hated walking on the driveway's gravel. The timestamp showed they'd spent 53 minutes in our bedroom. I noted the exact moment her wedding ring, a modest emerald we'd chosen together at a flea market in Savannah, disappeared into the nightstand drawer. That night, I inventoried our life like a crime scene. Her iPad, left charging on the kitchen island, yielded a deleted folder labeled 261 photos of hotel suites, vineyard sunsets, and a diamond tennis bracelet still coiled in its Tiffany box. Her Venmo showed weekly $500 payments to a lakeside med spa, though their website listed no such package. A deeper dive revealed the spa was a shell company registered to a Marcus Vellon, MD, a cardiologist whose Yelp reviews praised his bedside manner in suspiciously florid terms. I began mirroring her phone to my private server, a trick I'd used on corporate espionage cases. Her texts were artfully sanitized, but her maps history painted a damning mural. Midday detours to a Windermere address, 45-minute stops at a Hyatt off I-4, recurring Wednesday reservation for two at Ordo, a Michelin-starred crypt where entrees cost more than our first couch. The physical evidence arrived via our mail, a Bloomingdale's catalog addressed to Evelyn Vellon. The return label bore the Windermere address. I held the glossy pages under UV light, revealing a faint lipstick smear on a lingerie spread, the same burnt sienna shade she'd worn to our anniversary dinner. She'd circled a La Perla chemise with a note. Next time, I confronted nothing. Instead, I started running, not from her, but toward the version of myself that could survive this. At 5 a.m., as she slept in our king-size tomb, I'd pound the pavement until my lungs burned, replaying every moment I'd mistaken her indifference for tranquility. The way she'd stopped displaying our photos, claiming the frames clashed with the minimalist aesthetic. Her insistence on separate vacations last year, self-care journeys she called them. Even the night she drunkenly compared me to her father, "You're both so stable," while crying over a lukewarm Chardonnay. By September, I'd mapped their rhythm. Mondays and Thursdays at the Windermere House, his clinic's administrative half-days. Fridays at the Hyatt, room 214, always paid in cash. I considered crashing their trysts, but violence lacked poetry. Instead, I studied Velen, his 27-year marriage to a socialite named Lila, his directorship at Central Florida Heart Institute, his portfolio of rental properties mortgaged to their eyeballs. A man who'd built his empire on prestige, but financed it on quicksand. The final thread snapped on a rain-slicked October morning. Evelyn left her Apple Watch charging on the bathroom sink, a rare lapse. The health app showed a resting heart rate spike to 122 BPM at 2:14 a.m. alongside a 1.2-mile outdoor walk logged while I'd been in Atlanta for a conference. The GPS trail led to Velen's condo. I cross-referenced security cam footage from the building's lobby. There she was, hair mussed, wearing my navy Burberry trench like a villain's cape. That night, I sat in my home office, a room she'd never bothered to decorate, and drafted 2 envelopes. The first contained divorce papers, her infidelity clauses, highlighted in neon. The second held a single SD card loaded with every screenshot, receipt, and timestamped betrayal. I addressed it to Lila Velen. As dawn bled through the blinds, I realized I felt nothing. Not rage, not sorrow, just the crisp focus of a man who'd finally found the glitch in the code. Evelyn had mistaken my silence for surrender. She'd learn soon enough. In cybersecurity and in heartbreak, the quietest threats are the deadliest. Revenge, I discovered, was not an act, but an ecosystem, a series of interdependent systems requiring the patience of a gardener and the precision of a bomb technician. I started with Velen's weakest node, his rental properties. Posing as a prospective tenant, I toured his downtown condo, noting the keypad entries factory default code 1122 and the Nest cameras angled to miss the balcony. That night, I disabled the building's security feed for 23 minutes, long enough to leave the sliding door unlocked and scatter counterfeit jewelry in master bedroom. On 3 dark web forums, I posted detailed blueprints of the unit under the headline, "Easy Winter Getaway." Police reported the burglary 2 days later. Velen's insurance premiums spiked by 40%. His medical practice proved more resilient, but far more satisfying. Using credentials harvested from a phishing email disguised as a Medicare audit, I accessed his clinic's patient portal. A script altered 1,347 billing codes, changing routine checkups to unnecessary stress tests and phantom echocardiograms. The discrepancies were subtle, designed to mimic clerical errors. By the time his accountant noticed, the overbilling had already triggered an automated flag at the Department of Health. The suspension of his Medicare privileges made local headlines. I framed the article and mailed it to Evelyn's office. Velen, meanwhile, scrambled to contain the damage. He liquidated his Tesla shares to cover the clinic's legal fees and listed the Windermere House at a loss. Evelyn's brokerage handled the sale, her commissions funneled into a joint account I'd long ago linked to my monitoring software. She didn't notice the 2% administrative fee I siphoned into an offshore dummy corporation, a slow bleed to mirror my own. The true masterpiece required physical access. During an open house at Velen's condo, I planted a modified Amazon Echo beneath the bathroom sink, a device that emitted ultrasonic frequencies at 19 kilohertz just beyond human hearing. To the lawyers, techs, and prospective buyers, the condo seemed cursed. Headaches bloomed during walk-throughs. One couple's toddler vomited in the foyer. The listing was pulled within a week. Evelyn's unraveling became my compass. She stopped dyeing her roots, letting streaks of gray fracture her perfect chestnut facade. Her Fitbit data showed sleep cycles fractured by 3 a.m. pacing. Once, I found her standing in the pantry at midnight, clutching a jar of artisanal honey and crying silently. She didn't see me. I didn't comfort her. In February, Velen's desperation crystallized. He took out a second mortgage on his primary residence to fund a wellness retreat in Sedona, a tax write-off disguised as a couple's therapy camp. Evelyn packed her suitcase with linen tunics and crystal pendants. I waited until her flight reached cruising altitude, then triggered the script I'd buried in Velen's clinic database. Patient records began streaming to an Orlando Sentinel reporter known for exposés on medical corruption. The article would publish at dawn, but the notification on Velen's phone, a single push alert previewing the headline, would arrive mid-flight over Nebraska airspace. I spent that evening reconfiguring the smart locks on our house. Evelyn's biometric access was revoked. Her personal effects, the Tiffany bracelet, the silk robes, the vials of bergamot perfume, were boxed and left in the garage. At 2:17 a.m., her lift pulled into the driveway. She didn't bother with the doorbell. Through the security feed, I watched her pound the keypad until her knuckles split, then slump against the doorframe, mascara pooling beneath her eyes like ink blots. When the Sentinel piece dropped, Velen's face dominated the fold. Prominent cardiologist accused of $2.1 million Medicare fraud. His clinic's website redirected to a mirror site I'd built, a slideshow of his Yacht Week photos intercut with patient testimonials from the dark web. One review stood out. Dr. Velen gave me a stress test and a staph infection. 3 out of 5 stars. Evelyn returned once more, this time with a locksmith. I observed via drone as she emptied her closet, the diamond tennis bracelet glinting under the midday sun. She paused at my office window, her reflection a funhouse distortion of the woman I'd married. I didn't wave. By sundown, her Venmo showed a $5,000 payment to M. Velen Consulting. I celebrated with a glass of 18-year Macallan, toasting the elegant simplicity of collapse. Systems like marriages fail not from single blows but from accumulated stress fractures. Velen's empire was now a house of matchsticks. All it needed was a breath. True destruction requires symmetry, not the blunt force of rage, but the exacting alignment of every vulnerability into a single irreversible sequence. I began with Evelyn's vanity. Her real estate license, the one she'd framed above her desk like a trophy, hinged on a spotless ethical record. A forged complaint filed with the state board, anonymous but rich in verifiable details, accused her of steering clients toward Velen's properties in exchange for kickbacks. The PDF included timestamps of their Hyatt meetings, screenshots of deleted texts, and a scanned check from Velen's shell company made out to her maiden name. The investigation opened within days. Her broker severed ties before she could empty her desk. Velen's finale demanded grander staging. On the morning of his charity gala, an annual event where he posed with sick children for the society pages, I unleashed 3 synchronized strikes. First, a deepfake video sent to every donor. Velen's face grafted onto a body double ranting about leeches milking the healthcare system. The rendering was imperfect by design, just convincing enough to ignite doubt, not scrutiny. Second, a ransomware attack on his clinic's backup servers, encrypting a decade of patient records behind a payment demand in Bitcoin. The ransom note included a 30-second clip of his Windermere surveillance footage set to Bolero. The third stroke was simpler. I mailed Lila Velen a USB drive containing every photo, receipt, and video of her husband's affair, not to her home, but to her Pilates studio, where she'd be surrounded by the coven of influencers who curated her self-worth. By noon, her Instagram bio read, "Recently single sparkles," alongside a link to a GoFundMe for emotional recovery. Evelyn's final act played out in our kitchen. She arrived at dawn, her key jammed uselessly in the lock, her face stripped of makeup and malice. Through the window, I watched her mouth my name silently against the glass, a pantomime of penitence. I sipped my coffee, savoring the bitterness as she pressed her phone to the pane. A screenshot of her frozen bank accounts, her name auto-filled in eviction notices. When she left, she took nothing but the trench coat she'd stolen months prior. The security tag I'd sewn into the lining would trigger alarms at every major retailer in the state. Velen's collapse was televised. By week's end, his clinic had shuttered, his licenses revoked, his face pixelated in local news segments about Medicare fraud. The Windermere house, once a monument to his arrogance, sold at auction to a tech bro who painted it neon green. I attended the auction under a pseudonym, bidding $100 above the bank's reserve, a petty flourish, but necessary. The divorce decree arrived on a Thursday. Evelyn's lawyer, a harried man smelling of convenience store vodka, negotiated no alimony, no assets, just a swift dissolution. She signed the papers in a Starbucks parking lot, her signature shaky beneath the clause barring her from contesting. I donated her share of the house to a women's shelter, ensuring the tax deduction landed in her inbox on what would have been our 15th anniversary. Months later, I stood in the ashes of their lives. Velen's LinkedIn now listed him as a wellness consultant in Boca Raton, his profile photo, cropped to hide the foreclosure notice behind him. Evelyn had relocated to a studio apartment, her Instagram a graveyard of inspirational quotes and hashtag fresh start selfies. The diamond bracelet, pawned for rent, funded exactly 17 days of her new reality. I kept the dog, a chocolate lab named Gus, who'd never liked Evelyn's perfume. We moved to a cabin in the Blue Ridge, where the silence felt earned, not imposed. Some nights, I'd hike to the ridge and watch thunderstorms vein the horizon. Lightning, I'd learned, is just electricity seeking the path of least resistance. Revenge, I now understood, isn't about balance. It's about becoming the ground, the unyielding earth that swallows fire without flinching. Let them choke on their choices. Let them rebuild from dust. My victory wasn't in their ruin, but in the quiet that followed. The absence of their footsteps, the unclenching of my jaw. The dawns no longer measured in betrayals. In the end, I didn't destroy them. They'd done it themselves. I simply held up the mirror. One story may be ending, but the excitement never stops. Don't wait. Jump right into the next one and keep the thrill alive.